Okay, so we'll get started. Anyone that streams in will stream in. Well, welcome everybody to the J term session that I'm hosting here today on searching beyond the classroom and how to use the academic research skills that we get through, our work in the classroom and in the library to better inform sort of our interests, our passions, some of the things that we're into, and become more information literate. So my name is Yoel Delessa. I'm a research and instruction librarian here at Gettysburg College. I work with the political science department and the management department. I'm the library liaison for them. If I've had you in class before, hi. If I haven't, nice to meet you. Um, Research and instruction is exactly what it sounds like. So we are the front-facing sort of department of the library with student engagement. We work at the research help desk. We teach classes along with faculty on like how to use the library's databases, how to do research, how to find good sources, that sort of good stuff. We work with programs and departments like Res Life and first year programs. And so that's the basis of what we do. And so this session today is sort of thinking about that that term information literacy and that term academic research. And really a lot of times students get bogged down with finding a good source or doing a good citation. But whether you know it or not, those skills are very much applicable to your everyday life and can be super helpful to you with just becoming, a more critical thinker with the information you engage with. So that's going to be the basis of the presentation. Again, I really enjoy being in person, seeing faces, nonverbals, cues really helps me out. With the virtual, it's okay. We'll just push through. It's a pandemic, right? So we'll just do our best. My hope is that I'm not lecturing at you or like we're not looking at this PowerPoint that I created the whole time, but this can be more of a discussion, especially since there's only 3 of us or 4 of us here. So feel free to chime in at any point if anything stands out to you. I do have some questions that I'll be asking you. You can use the chat or you can just unmute yourself and talk. A little bit about my background. I studied political science and philosophy at the University of Maryland. Go Terps. And then I also went on to do my graduate studies at the University of Maryland in library and information science. And so I worked in public libraries for several years before I became an academic librarian. So I've been in libraries for, like 7, 8 years now, both working again in public libraries and in colleges and universities. One of the great things about our profession is helping people sort of navigate and understand and tackle the complex world of information, like information that are fingertips, it's everywhere. And so what is important with what we do is sort of this ability to help people navigate that. And when I was in public libraries, this was especially helpful. As you can imagine, if like English is not your first language. I worked in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is a very diverse area. People from, it's a suburb of Washington, D.C. So there's people from all over the world that live in the area. And so you can imagine if English is not your first language and you're trying to find a job or trying to do healthcare application, the library is sort of the first place that you go to get help with that sort of thing. Not only are there people there, but there's also like computers and internet and spaces. And this obviously changes a little bit when you are working with college age students and students that are doing their academic research. While you all are more technically literate, there's still so much information out there that if you have a paper or if you need help with the citation, that's sort of what we do, work through that process together. And it's always rewarding, whether it's when I was in public libraries, someone will come back after a few weeks, you haven't seen them, they're like, hey, Yoel, thanks for helping me with that job app. I'm working down the street at Starbucks. If you ever need a coffee, come holler at me. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Or here, when a student comes back and they say, I got an A on that paper. Thanks for helping me find that stuff. So it's a really rewarding sort of work that we do. I enjoy it a lot. So if you ever see me here at the desk, please say hello. How often do you all use the library or have used the library or any of our resources? Have you, let's say, used the research help desk? No, but you nodded your head. Is it MC? You nodded your head.
Yeah, I've
So,
used like the database online.
okay. So you've used the database, but not the people, which is totally fine. That's totally fine. And is it theory?
Yeah,
You've
that's
used
theory.
theory? What? Yeah.
I've met with peer research. Is it peer research mentor? Yeah, I
Yes.
met her quite a few times to help with my paper and also other research.
Yes, absolutely. So we have peer research mentors that work at the desk. They are students, but they get trained by us to like help students navigate the databases and that sort of stuff. So yeah, absolutely. If you ever come into the library and see the people at the desk, it's usually a librarian and a peer research mentor. So that, yeah, they're awesome. So yeah, that's the data, and it's okay to not use us, by the way. If you're like, I can jump in there and work around, that's totally okay. And so that the the point is that like there's so many different ways to engage with us. We have the ask chat. So next week we're not going to be in person. So but all of our reference services will still be available just virtually. So if you go on the library's website, you'll see the ask us anything chat, and you can click that chat and it'll connect you with a real person that can help you out. And so there's a lot, like we're sort of at the precipice of understanding how information can help us or harm us, to be honest with you. And we'll kind of talk about what that means. There's so much information available to us all the time. There's a term called information overload, especially now, especially with the last 2 years with people being at home and people mostly being online, or that's how they're doing most of their engagement. I got married over Zoom for the most part. I had like my family there, my close family there, but then there's like 200 people in a Zoom watching me get married. So most of the stuff we did for the last 2 years has been virtual, and it also leads us to engage with information online. But there's still not a lot of research that shows how this impacts the way that we think, the way that we learn, the way that we present and display our understanding and knowledge. So we're still sort of at the precipice of that sort of information and knowledge. And this session is going to sort of walk us through how to confront this and use it to better understand ourselves and the world around us. So yeah, that's my hope today. It's a big hope. And again, you'll hopefully get something out of it that leads you to say, you know what, I kind of understand how my academic research can inform my personal interests or passions or hobbies in a better way. And that's the main thing. But it's not going to be me talking at you the whole time. So I like to start with you just introducing yourselves in the chat. So if you could say your year and one piece of information or entertainment that you've engaged with over winter break that's really like enthralled you. So this could be like a book, it could be a podcast, it could be a movie, a TV show, something that's really that you've engaged with in the past, whatever month that we've been away or during the semester that you are really enjoying or is really piqued your curiosity in some sort of way. Nice. Thank you for sharing. MC Brené Brown is like my wife's favorite author. She is a head coach at a university for field hockey, and she has a lot. She uses her stuff a lot for like leadership development and yeah, sort of thinking about managing a group of people and how to do it with like inspiration and stuff. So yeah, awesome. Was that a gift or something that you like picked out on your own, or someone recommended it to you?
I'm also an avid Brene Brown lover, and it's just one of the many books that I have been planning to read and haven't gotten around to it till this winter break, and realize just how transformative all of her work is. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you, Thierry. You class of 24. So that means you're a sophomore. I'm not really bad at math, as you can tell. That was me trying to do
Yeah, I'm
math quick.
sophomore.
Oh, it says sophomore right there in the front. And you read a book called Almond. Did you? It's a fiction book. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it is a fiction. I really liked it actually. It's because I like Korean, and it's kind of like bring me to Korea. And
Yeah,
it's just talking about this condition that is really unique. So yeah.
cool. Well, thank you for sharing. And then if Evan, you want to share, you can go ahead. If not, we'll get started. So
yeah, I'm a sophomore, and this is like it's basically a textbook about the Roman Empire.
cool. And you Evan put it in the chat, but it's a direct message to me. It's called SPQR by Mary Beard, about the Roman Empire. So that sounds epic. Thank you. Thanks. I'll share. So last, like, you know, the movie Dune came out, and so I worked again in public libraries for a long time. If you go to the Frank Herbert section of a public library, there's like a million Dune books. And so when the movie came out, I was like, man, let me see what the big deal is. So before I watched the movie, I decided to read the book, and it just completely like I became obsessed. So I'm on book 3 now. And again, my wife was like, we have a baby, we have a 5-month-old, and like a diaper needs change, and I'm just like sitting in a corner reading Dune. So that is taking up a lot of my time right now, but it is epic. So if you've seen the movie or you've read the books, apparently the movie is only like half of the first book, which makes sense because there's so much that happens. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you, everybody. And so we will go through my fun PowerPoint presentation. So let's see, how should I do this? All right. Okay, so the classic, what do you see? Does everyone see the screen, that like the PowerPoint presentation? It's in full screen mode. Okay. Man, this stuff. At least no one's told me that I'm muted. That's, you know, when someone's talking, you see their mouth moving. It's like, hey, you're muted. Yeah, I forgot to unmute myself. All right, so start with a quote here from an author and a researcher. His name is Peter Ducker, and it kind of stood out to me as I was putting this presentation together. The purpose of information is not knowledge, it is being able to take the right action. And it's a little nebulous and sort of like pie in the sky, but for the purposes of what we're going to be talking about today, it actually makes a lot of sense. Because again, I was a student not too long ago, actually a long time ago, but I remember it well enough that you can get really bogged down in saying finding my articles and writing my paper is really just about getting to the A, or like putting together enough knowledge that I can show my professor, like I know what I'm talking about. But as you're doing this, you're also, again, learning to critically think about the information you're engaging with. And it's not take the right action. For me, my interpretation of this quote is not take the right action as some sort of moral or ethical sort of thing, but it's just sort of like an efficiency thing. Or it could be something that's like, you know, like I know how to do this a little bit better or a little bit faster, a little more efficient, so that I don't waste as much time. So it's not just about like doing the right thing, like a moral standpoint, but like if you're deciding to buy a car, you have a way to think about that process that hopefully will make it easier for you, or involve you not spending as much money or getting a great deal. So the right action in that case is just something that leads to a better outcome for you. That's my takeaway from this. And that's sort of the takeaway of this presentation, is like, how can we use the academic research skills that we have to be better researchers in our everyday life? And so again, so I'm from the Research Instruction Department of the Musselman Library. What we do a lot is work with something called information literacy, which is a very specific sort of literacy. So there's like financial literacy and health literacy, that sort of thing. Information literacy is the encompasses all of that. It's just the ability to sort of know when there's a need for information, and then know where to go to find it, evaluate it, and then use it effectively. So this, in an academic research standpoint, it's like you have a topic, you know what databases to use to search for that topic, you know how to know like the difference between a peer-reviewed article versus a blog post, you know how to evaluate it, and then effectively use it as like, you paraphrase correctly, you cite correctly, you do your reference page correctly. But this can also work in our everyday life. So we critically think about information all the time, or hopefully you think critically about information all the time. So some examples are, social media, whether it's something like knowing a trend on Twitter, if it's like what it's really talking about, or like what's happening now. Actually, a lot of the social media companies, specifically Twitter and Facebook, in the last 2 years, we've seen them take on the role of fact checking and telling you what's a true story or not a true story, which to me as a librarian is like, I don't want the companies to do this. I would like the individuals to be able to identify and critically think about the information and identify it for themselves. It kind of scares me that we are at a place where the companies are taking on this role for themselves, because people fall for stuff all the time. But it could be little things. So let me ask you, if you are a fan of a musician and you follow their Instagram, for instance, how do you know that that musician is the real person and not like some fake person that's using that name to create a fake account? Like, what's a really easy way to identify that?
I don't know.
So if you're on like an Instagram account, they usually have the verified check, right? The little blue check that tells you this is who this person really is. A lot of times, like if you're a social media user, you know that that blue check means this is a verified account. There's a lot of people that don't know what that blue check means. They're like, they can, again, my public library background comes into play, because we had our regulars all the time that would be like, hey, Tupac just followed me on Twitter. And I'm like, Tupac did not follow you on Twitter. Show me. And it would be like a quotes page that had like, 100,000 people that they were following. So being able to just quickly identify the difference between a quotes page and a real verified page is something that requires you to use a little bit of information literacy. Your daily needs. So the food that you eat, a restaurant that you're going to. I mentioned briefly that I have a child. I'm a new father. And you can imagine, like, the internet is a very useful place, and it's a very scary place to like look things up about your baby. Like, it can be helpful to be like, okay, is this normal, or like, what should I do if this happens? But also you all need to sort of be intentional about what you need to look up. So a lot of the information we engage with is knowing not to engage with it, or like being able to say, this is actually not something that I need to look up. Like, my baby farting is just my baby farting. It doesn't need to be something like tied to more than that. I can just let him fart. I don't need to Google like, what does it mean if your baby farts too much? Like, that will lead you down a rabbit hole that you don't want to go down. So it's just sort of like knowing when we have the information, like knowing when to not look the information up. And then of course, things like jobs and internships, and like how to find them, studying about a field or a career. And so this is how we like think about information in our everyday life. Does anyone have any other examples that you can think of where you're using information or becoming a researcher in a way?
I just think like when you're looking at websites, thinking about places that are like .org, .edu, .gov.
Absolutely.
Credibility.
Yep. And I mean, this is like, this is the new world we live in. Like there's a bit of a bias, there's a bit of a slant with most like information that you're receiving. So just even being aware of that, not necessarily doing anything about it, just being like, okay, this is a .edu, as you said, MC, or a .org or a .com. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so when we get to like what the research tools are, so from a library standpoint, there's a few, like sort of three, there's a lot of them, but there's three sort of umbrellas that everything falls under. So there are our research tools like MustCat Plus and the databases, which are just search tools of academic resources. There are our research guides, which are a collection of resources. So we have over 300 databases. So let's say like if you're a political science student, there's like 35, 40 databases that deal with political science subjects. So instead of going through each one, you can just go to the political science research guide and it will highlight like 2 or 3 that are important for you to know about. And then for classes that we teach, we actually put together research guides for those classes. So if you took a first year seminar class, you can go to like the first year seminar library page and there's like a research guide specifically for that class. And then of course, research help and research appointments at the library or online from librarians, or as mentioned already, the peer research mentors. So these are the ways that there's assistance for you while you're here as a student, but then you can engage with a number of these items as a not student either. So the database is unfortunately a MustCat Plus, that's only for students and current students. But we have research guides for alumni. We have research guides on like, if you're interested in like investing or investment firms, we have like research guides with online and available resources for that. And then you can always talk to us at the research help desk as well, even if you're not a student. So the term academic research is really something that you're going to engage with all the time. So the academic research process, it's not linear. So it's not to say what I'm about to share with you is like only informs it one to the next to the next. Step 3 can help you with step 1. But for the most part, the agreed upon sort of approach to the academic research is to first find a topic, then to do your background research, then to find credible peer-reviewed research, then evaluate that information and integrate it into your paper. And then the 5th step is to write and cite your paper. So this is the general research process. But you can see, like, if you're writing about, let's say, climate change on college campuses, that's your number 1, that's your topic. And then as you start to do background research, you find that actually college students aren't necessarily like talking about climate change as a whole. They're talking more about plastics and recycling. Those are the specifics of climate change that college students are thinking about. That can then help you develop your topic. So you go from 1, 2, back to 1 to sort of refine your topic. And so these steps that we take in our academic research process are also steps that you're going to engage with and take when you're just, again, trying to find a job, trying to locate an internship, trying to find information in your community. Again, it's not going to be specific to finding peer-reviewed articles. Like sometimes you're not going to find peer-reviewed articles on like, you know, a hobby. I mean, you can, but if you're just trying to find out where people play flag football, you don't need to find peer-reviewed articles. You're just going to more so like do a scan of the web and see what you can find. But critically engaging with each part of these steps, whether it's academic or not, is going to really help you find information in an efficient manner. So think back to when you had the opportunity to select from a broad range of topics to write about. How did you select that topic? Like, what was your process? So you see this often, especially in the first 2 years. It might be a little bit different for you, MC, as a senior now, where you're kind of being told what to write by your professors. But in your first couple years, your professors kind of give you a broad range, right? They say, okay, this is a class on history, so write about anything within a history lens, or this is an English class, academic writing class, write about a topic that you care about. So how did you select that topic? Like, what was your process? You can put it in the chat, or you can unmute it and share.
Well, just personally for me, I always try to pick a topic either that scares me because I don't know anything about it, or it's something that I do have experience in, maybe unrelated or related. So usually either experience or a complete lack of experience, just so I can, I don't know, challenge myself.
Thank you for sharing. That is generally where students come from. It's either something you assume to know like a lot of information about, or you have some background on it, or you wrote about it in high school. That tends to be it. Or it's something that you're like, which you don't see as often, which I'm glad you said, is like, I want to know more about this. So writing about it will help me get that information. Theory, Evan, do you all have any background with this or anything you want to share?
Usually preference for familiar topics, sort of as indicated, just to ease it.
Yep, thank you. Theory, go ahead.
Yeah, usually I choose topic that was recent on the news sometime, because sometimes I read the news and then there's something interesting happens, so I want to look deeper into it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And everyone hit on exactly as MC helped us with the starting point. But there you also bring up a good point where it's like a current topic or something that's very much, and that leads to the other side of like, you want to know more about it. So it seems interesting. You maybe read one article, you see it online, and you want to know more about it. But we often say choosing a topic in itself is a research process. So that intuitive sort of instinct to say, I already know about this, so I feel comfortable writing about it, is a way that will help us not only learn more about the topic, but also break some of the assumptions that we have about that topic. Because you think you know something, or you think you have an understanding of it, but then once you sort of start to do the research, you might change your opinion on that topic, or you might learn something new about the topic that you didn't know before, which is a part of the academic research process that is very instructive in helping us out with everyday life. So one of these examples is finding a job or finding an internship. Usually that's a parallel approach, right? So when you're thinking about a career or a job or an internship, you're not necessarily saying, I want to go do something that I've never heard of or don't know anything about. You usually are like, this is something I've thought about. This is something I know about. I have parents or guardians that do it, or I have friends that have done it, or I've seen people that do it and it looks interesting. And so you take those same sort of steps that we see in the academic research process to finding out about a job or applying for a job. And you either find out more about the job that's like, oh, this is something I really want to do, or you end up being like, you know what, this actually, now that I know more about it, actually I'm not that interested anymore, which happens with pretty much any step that you take in the research process. So there's finding a field or a discipline. So let's say you're trying to find an internship for next summer, you know what your major is, so you're like, let me find it within my major. You do the background research on it, you find out more about the industry, the salary, work expectations. A term you hear often is organizational culture. So like you start to find out more about how organizations within this field work. You read the job descriptions, maybe you reach out to past interns. So that's sort of like the finding articles part of it, is like investigating who to talk to, who to reach out to. You send emails. Then you sort of evaluate to say, okay, this job really needs someone who has good reading and writing analytical skills. I have those skills. I'm going to make sure I emphasize that in my resume or my interview. And then you apply and you interview. So the academic research process, from finding a topic to writing your paper, those steps is very much parallel to this one example of everyday sort of research, which is finding an internship and applying and getting that internship. The better you are and the more you engage with the critical side of your academic research, the better you'll engage with the critical side of finding an internship. Whether it's even, here's something that academic research helps you with, that hopefully helps you with. And this is something I was guilty of as a student: procrastination. Like, we didn't mention this in sort of picking your topic, but a lot of times students pick their topic because it's just the one that they pick because the paper that they have to select it by this date, and they waited till the last minute to like pick a topic. And so you end up picking something that you haven't really thought through, but you're just like, this sounds good, and here, that's what I'm going to do. As you go on, and maybe MC, you can speak to this as a senior, you start to get a little bit better about that, right? Like, your paper's due in 3 months. So you're not like, I have 3 months to like chill. But usually start right away. And that was my experience as a student. From my freshman year, by my senior year, I was a lot better with being like, actually, the reason the professor gave us 3 months is because it's going to take sort of 3 months to think this through and put this together. And so that is very applicable to something like finding a summer internship. If you're a student that waits until May to think about the fields that you're interested in or applying for, you're going to end up with a very hard time finding one. And if you do find one, it's going to be more like not necessarily your first choice. In my experience, usually you're interviewing by like March for any summer internships, and then they've hired by April. So if you're in May and you haven't even thought about it, you're going to have a hard time finding it. So that little skill of just like being able to know, okay, this takes time. I have to sort of think this through, and I have to, start it ahead of time, that you do with your papers and your research. It's very much applicable to something like finding an internship. So the academic research process, we're going to highlight 3 things that it helps you do. One of them is be inquisitive. So you all mentioned that you pick topics that you know about, like that you have background on, that you have an understanding of. And that's a great sort of approach. But regardless of how much you know about a topic, you're usually going to end up learning more about that topic. You might have your mind changed about that topic. You might end up having assumptions that get broken, having assumptions that get reemphasized, or sort of put in a different context for you. This is often what you see with students when we're helping them with their research papers. Last semester, I had a student that I was helping who was writing about school discipline. And so they were coming from the approach that school discipline, suspensions are a way to sort of help behavioral adjustments for students. So that was sort of their approach. I don't know if they had background information that they were coming into it with, but their thesis is that like a more strict and a more sort of rigid discipline structure in schools led to better behavioral outcomes for students. And I don't know anything. I'm not a child behavioralist. I'm not a psychologist. A lot of the times I'm learning with you all, but the more research that we did, it actually ends up that there's a lot of research showing that it's the opposite effect, that like out of school suspensions, particularly like suspending students and then sending them home, which is a traditional sort of approach that's been taken, is not very effective at all in helping the student behave better. And so we learned that together, that the student and I, so the student's thesis ended up changing to be the complete opposite, that like schools need to take a more holistic approach to helping a student's behavior change. Now, if you just want the kid to be out of the bit, like they're causing a disruption and you just don't want them to be there anymore, then yeah, it's very effective to send them home. But if you're actually concerned about sort of like making behavioral changes on the student, then out of school suspensions are not going to work. So this often happens with your academic research. You have a sort of approach, you have a thesis, and then you end up learning something completely new. The other thing about academic research, and this is, I want to emphasize this, your personal interests can be academic. A lot of times students have a very, very boxed in sort of approach to what is an academic topic. The things you care about in your everyday life can be topics of research. We have a game that we play here sometimes with some classes. It's called Search and Destroy, which is like, it's a way to help you, learn to use the databases, but it'll give you like random topics to like put together and search up. So naps, nuclear, cats, you put those in our databases and see what you find. And you will find academic research on naps, cats, and nuclear, somehow, some way connecting it. The breadth and expanse of academic research is very, very wide. So if you're into photography, if you're into music, if you're into chess, if you're into sports or athletics, if you're into like wellness or health, anything that in your everyday life that you care about, video games that you're interested in, you can find an academic lens through which to write about it, to learn more about it. And again, it can inform what you end up doing once you're done with school. If you know that actually there's a whole field on like musicology and ethnomusicology, and just studying and listening to music and writing about it and teaching about it, then when you start to take your classes, when you start to be able to pick your topics, you're not framed into just like, oh, I have to write about elections or I have to write about the climate. Like those are not the only sort of topics. There's a whole world of academic research. And this is a part of the fun of being a librarian. A student comes to the desk saying, hey, I need to find research articles on X. And usually it's like, sure, let's see what we can find. And usually there's research out there on, you can think of any topic, there's probably academic research out there to help it out. So as you're working through your classes, your topics, and you get the opportunity to write about things, try to pick things that you care about, that you have an interest in, and you'll be surprised at what you find out there. The second thing the academic process gives students the opportunity is intentional. So that whole thing about efficiency, right? So who wrote this? What are they saying? Where is this study taking place? When was this published? Why did they write it? These are sort of the questions that you engage with when it comes to like finding peer-reviewed articles or finding quote unquote good articles. A lot of times your professors are going to say, you need to have scholarly research to support and back up your claims. And so you become, through that process, a lot more intentional. So instead of going just to Google to find articles, you're like, I know that I can go to the databases. I can go to Muscat Plus, I can go to the library, I can talk to a librarian to help me sort of find peer-reviewed articles. Your professors will say, you can only have papers published in the last 5 years on this topic, which is something that often happens, right? Which makes sense for some research. It makes sense that it'd be more current. So then, again, now, like, okay, when something is published is also an important aspect of it. So you start to pay attention to like the years things come out, the why of it, sort of like, why did they write this? Where is this? What's the slant? What's the bias? What's their hope? So doing that in your academic research, again, hopefully will inform you in your everyday life, sort of finding information, being a little more critical, like looking for the year, like when did this come out? Like, what are they talking about? Who wrote this? Like, why can't I find the author? That's something that was a real trouble for me back when I was younger online. It's like, you never could see who the author was. And now it's like, okay, if you can't see who the author is, then that's probably a sign that this is not a good paper. So yeah, being intentional in your papers is certainly a way to become more intentional in your everyday life. Yeah, so critically thinking about the information you're engaging with all the time. And again, this is something that is more necessary than ever now. When it used to be something where it was like, okay, this is wrong information, or people have it's incomplete information. But now there's a sort of movement that is like intentionally informing bad information out there. So that's a sudden shift in the last like 5 or 6 years in the information landscape, where it was like, it used to be that some information was incomplete or some information you have to look more into, but now it's like there's intentional sort of like bad information out there that's meant to deceive, or even from a basic standpoint of like, you know, like those scam calls that you get, or those scam texts that you get, like, oh, your November bill is paid, like click here. It's like, don't click on that link. So like people intentionally trying to like deceive you with information, which is a fairly new phenomenon as far as like the technology age is concerned. So like critically thinking about that and being like, you know what, why would AT&T be texting me right now, like to thank me for paying my bill? Like that's probably not a real thing. And so deleting that and not engaging with that. And then lastly, information and academic research is going to help you learn how you learn. So how do you learn? Like this is something that academic research will certainly help you do. Are you good at doing? So you learn by doing. Are you a kinesthetic learner? Are you a visual learner where you learn by seeing, hearing it, auditory, or like saying it? I'm very much someone who's like, if I repeat the information back to myself or somebody else, it helps me retain that information and retain that knowledge. So when you're writing your papers and when you're sort of like picking up on this information, you can figure out, okay, I'm retaining this because I'm writing it, or I'm retaining it because I was paying attention to or listening when my professor was saying it. So academic research helps you learn how you learn. And again, this, whether you never open up another textbook again after school, knowing what kind of learner you are is absolutely essential. I'll personal testament, like I know that I learned by seeing somebody do it. So I'm a new homeowner. There's a lot of stuff to do around the house. I'm not the most handy person. Like I'm not like one of these people who just picks up a screwdriver and can like fix anything. But if I like watch a YouTube video, like my YouTube algorithms are so messed up right now. It's all about like installing closet doors. But I know that if I like watch someone do that on YouTube, then I could, for the most part, if I have the resources, do it as well. So that's something I picked up in college, is like seeing someone do it, like visually, like integrating that into my brain helps me pick up on information. And so something you should pay attention to is how you learn. When you're reading an article, do you learn better when it's a physical piece of paper or when you're reading it on the computer? Do you feel better when you're learning, when you're studying in a quiet area, or when you're studying in a more like rambunctious, like well-lit area? So those are sort of things that if you pick up on them as you're doing your academic research, it will certainly help you in your everyday life. So through that process, through academic research, you become inquisitive, you become intentional, and you pick up on your learning style. All three of these things go beyond the scope of academic research. They help you become a more information literate person and a more information literate citizen that can sort of like, again, help you be more efficient with your hobbies, your passions, your interests, your jobs, your careers. So as you're working through this spring semester, as you're working through, I know it's very hard, it's very easy to just sort of get bogged down in that first aspect of knowledge retention. Is like, I just need to show to the professor I know what I'm talking about. A meta version, a meta level of that is to also understand how it's informing you as a person and you as a thinker and a learner, and you will benefit from that sort of awareness. All right, thank you. So that's my TED Talk. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I want to leave the floor if there's any questions or comments, or anything that I said that you want more information on. Please feel free to share. But I really do want to thank you. I try, again, if you ever see me in person, I promise I won't talk at you the whole time. It's just, we're very limited in this modality, but yeah, I want to leave the floor open to anybody that has anything to say or any questions.
Well, I really appreciated that talk, and I will definitely be visiting you in the library now because of that.
That's awesome. That's the one thing is like, in all of this, and I say this when we teach the classes, is that research is difficult, whether it's a student or we help faculty as well. We're faculty liaisons. You could be a PhD in something, you're going to need help. And so even as a librarian, we use each other all the time. So if there's anything you get from this, is to like utilize the resources, which include us. So get help and make sure that, you know, you're taking advantage of that. So thank you for sharing, MC.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, and I appreciate the presentation as well. Well done, good sir. And I'll certainly be taking advantage of the plentiful resources in information technology provided by the college. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, well, thank you all. Oh, go ahead, Thierry, sorry.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. Also, I have a question. Did I hear you wrong when you were saying there's actually resource for alumni who can actually go back and ask you question as well?
Yeah, so for alumni of the college, you're limited in the databases that you can use. Like, there's really no database access, but you can get a community card with just for the community that we have community access for. So we have a browsing collection, and so you can get the books that we have that that are available, the periodicals that we have that are available, you have access to. And then, of course, if you have questions that we can help you with at the research help desk as an alum, we're happy to help you as well. So we see that often with alumni that are still in the area. They still use the library for a number of different resources. But the one thing you can't use is like the databases. So the online resources and the online tools that we have as an alum, you don't really have access to, but there's a number of things that you have access to with the physical items.
I see, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. There's on the library's guide, on the library's page, there's a alumni. Actually, I'll put it in the chat and then I will let you all go. There's like a information for if you're an alum. So I'll put that in the chat, and then that will be our so this link here will give you all the information about alumni resources, loan periods, all that stuff, and how to access things that you do have access to.